In the Slammer. 35 years inside with Noel Razor Smith.
Hello and welcome to In the Slammer. 35 years inside with Noel Razor Smith. My name's Elliott Frisby, and this is the podcast where we talk the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We've covered so many different side of things now, and we've got so many more to go. I mean, as I often say, you know, we hit one podcast and I get 100 questions out of each one. But I think this is one which people could be really interested in, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. I think it'll be different on the different prisons that you've been inside, and we're going to cover food.
Right.
All right, we're going to cover food. So let's just go generic to start off with. What's it like, prison food?
In two words, absolutely terrible on the whole. The prison system, I don't know if you understand this, but the prison system are the only place in the country where spaghetti hoops are classed as a vegetable. That's one of your 5 a day spaghetti hoops.
Right.
So, you know, the food, on the whole, the food is bad in prison. And the reason it's bad is because of the budgets. A while ago, I know a guy who's an ex-prison officer, and he told me the same thing, but a while ago it was discovered that every prison was spending £1.43 per prisoner per day for meals. So that's 3 meals for £1.43. Prison guard dogs have an allowance of £4.98 per day for meals. So the dogs that they use to patrol the prisons, they spend 4 times more on their meals than they do on the actual prisoners' meals. You know, some of the stuff you find in prison you would not find outside. Some weird, very weird combinations of foods.
Like what?
You might have something like fish fingers and cabbage. You know, it just depends on whatever they've got in the kitchen at the time. And quite a lot of times the food, they run out of food. So you might have put down, say, it sounds great having a menu. You have to fill it in a week in advance and you get 4 choices, 1 vegetarian and the other 3, 1 kosher, 1 halal and 1 normal. All the meat in prison apparently now is halal because they want to err on the side of caution, which means that if you're a Jewish prisoner and you can't eat halal, they have to supply you a meal that is kosher. We get a lot of letters about this in the prison paper, and to pay for that kosher meal costs something around £3.50, which is like double the prisoner's food allowance a day, so they don't like doing it. But, you know, what you find across the prison system is there are a few prisons that have really great people managing their kitchens. Bear in mind, the kitchens are actually run by the prisoners themselves. They're the people who do the main work.
That's one of the jobs you can do.
It's one of the well-paid jobs as well.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes you're up to about £20 a week in kitchen, but sometimes you do have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Prisoners used to bake all their own bread. Prisoners were reliant on their own stuff, so they'd have produce gardens, they'd have farms, they got their own meat. Some prisons still do, but a lot of the prisons, the food has been privatised, so basically you get whatever there is. And they buy all the vegetables from HMPPS services. And there's stuff that you wouldn't really buy in a shop outside. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just they're really odd vegetables, and sometimes one of the things that really I was delighted to get when I got out of prison after a long period was fresh bread. You never see fresh bread in prison, and you never see butter. It's always margarine or some kind of spread. And the bread, what they do is they buy it in bulk and they put it in the freezer. So you might be getting a loaf 6 months after they've bought it, and it's always like cardboard. So one of the things that I enjoyed most back in prison was actually eating some fresh bread. And actually, another thing about prison food is you kind of lose your ability to chew because it's like mush. There's nothing. It's not like out here when you get a chop or a steak and you have to actually chew it with your teeth. Prison food just goes down. It normally slips down. It's not gruel, but it's got the consistency of gruel.
And is it like that now?
Yes.
Like the feedback you're getting?
Oh yeah, it's different in each different prison. But the majority of prisons, the food is bad. We get some terrible reports. I mean, one of the most infamous things you get in prison is what they call slop in a pot, which can be basically anything that they threw into the pot. And mystery meat, really unidentified meat. They've got a lot of reclaimed meat they get because they have to buy the cheapest stuff. And nobody outside really cares that prisoners are they getting free? This is what people say. They're getting 3 meals a day? Yes, they are. Well, fair enough then. That's all they need. But you used to get 3 cooked meals a day in prison. Now you get 1. For the past, say, 15 years, what they do now is, in the old days, up until 15 years ago, you would be awakened in the morning, 7 o'clock. You'd be at your cell between 8 and half 8. You would pick up your breakfast from the hot plate, which would normally be a cooked breakfast, a bowl of porridge, which prison was famous for. And I have to say, they didn't use real porridge oats in prisons. I've worked in the kitchens, and what they use is grade-free Canadian pig meal, which is oats, which they feed the pigs in Canada because they're not very high-quality oats, but the prison system used to buy them in bulk to make porridge. So you'd get your bowl of porridge, and you might have a slice of bacon.
And the inmates knew that.
Oh, yeah.
So the thing what I can't stop going back to is the fact that how they're going to feel inside. And does that, because bear in mind, you said that the sentence is actually been taken away how did you phrase it?
The liberty.
Your liberty,
loss
right?
of liberty, yeah.
Yeah, loss of liberty. And if you're going to feel and basically be treated like, I know it's not, but like a pig, for example, then how are you going to feel as a human being someone to go out? Do you know what I mean? I can't help it.
It doesn't do much for your self-esteem, but that's what prison is about. It's about beating you down and breaking your spirit so you're easy to manipulate. Because if you've got people who are kicking off all the time, which you have in a lot of prisons, it makes their life harder. So they want to beat you down gradually. Food is part of the way they do it. You can't, if you don't eat the food, you starve. Okay. End of story. Unless you've got money to buy snacks from the canteen, which won't be anything substantial. It'd be like a tin of tuna if you're lucky, tin of sweet corn. Most people come out of prison not only addicted to drugs, but addicted to tuna and sweet corn because that's probably the best meal you can buy in prison. But as I say, different prisons are different. But what you get now is they decide, you'd come down in the morning, you get a bowl of porridge, you get maybe a slice of streaky bacon.
And what time's this, mate?
This would be before 9 o'clock, between 8 and 9. And you'd get a couple of slices of bread or toast. That was your breakfast in the morning. But they decided to privatise that to try and save money. So now, instead of coming out and getting your breakfast in the morning, the night before, when you're picking up your evening meal, they'll give you a plastic see-through bag with a variety pack of, say, cornflakes, with a quarter pint of milk in a carton, which the prison system supply, one roll, like a bread roll, and a couple of spreads. And that's your breakfast. It's called a breakfast pack. So now you get that the night before. Most people are so hungry, when they get it the night before, they eat it before the next day. So because you're stuck in a cell then for 12 hours with nothing except that bag of stuff. So the only cooked meal you get in prison now is the tea time meal, which is served around 4:30. That's the only cooked meal.
So what do you have for lunch?
Lunchtime now, it used to be a cooked meal. Now it's a sandwich, normally grated cheese in white bread, already done a couple of days ago, an apple and a generic bag of crisps, ready salted of some make you've never heard of, and that'll be your lunch. And the evening meal will be a cooked meal. So it's one cooked meal a day, one hot meal a day in jail, not free. So as I say, some prisons are pretty good at managing their kitchens. I was in Highdown prison when it first opened, and that's one of the prisons. I don't know if the listeners would know about this, but there's actually restaurants in prisons now around the country. They're called Clink restaurants, and they're open to the public. So certain prisons, like Brixton Prison, you can go in there, you can book to go into Brixton Prison and have a meal, and it's the best of food. They've got prisoners working in there as apprentices, learning to cook, learning to wait on tables, learning to be restaurant staff. So that's in about 3 or 4 prisons around the country. Now, when they opened the first one, which was at Highdown Prison in Surrey, they opened a Clink restaurant, and the same chef, the same guy who was doing the cooking for the restaurant, was doing the cooking for the prison, and he was ordering. The food in that prison for the second 4 years it was open was absolutely excellent. Prize-winning food. You've never seen anything like it. It's one of those prisons where people were delighted when mealtimes come, unlike other prisons where they're not so delighted. Mm-hmm. But that changed again. You know, the prisons changed, and now the food in there is quite crap, and now they call it pie down because they get so many pies. But yeah, I mean, Bristol was another prison. I was in Bristol in the early 90s, and the chef in there had a bit of initiative. The cook, he actually came from a catering background instead of just being a prison officer. And what he did was, there was a lot of sweet factories and chocolate factories around Bristol, and he got in touch with every one of them. He phoned them all up and said, look, can you donate anything at a cheap price, like rejects that you're not going to send to the shops, we'll take them into prison. So you were getting things like a Kit Kat at tea time, not in a proper Kit Kat packet, but it was a Kit Kat, you know, and people responded to that you had a salad every day as a lunch option. which you don't normally get in prison. Salad in prison is normally a cabbage chopped into bits with a bit of carrot grated into it. But he done actually some really good food. But when they move on, you notice the difference. The food goes back to being slop. It needs people in the kitchens who are really interested in what they're doing and want to provide a service. In most prisons, they're not. They're guys who have got a bit of a catering experience, join the prison service, and they go, right, put on a white uniform and go in the kitchen. And as I say, I worked in the kitchen in the Scrubs many years ago, and the things you see in the kitchens are outrageous. All the soups, stews, and porridge, say, when we still got it, they're made in huge, big boilers, big urns, and you've got a paddle, like a fisherman's paddle out of a rowboat, to stir this kind of stuff. So my job was stirring the stews. So I'd be standing over a boiler for about 5 hours a day, stirring the stew with a paddle. And I've seen some terrible things happen in kitchens. A lot of stabbings because there's a lot of metal implements about, and people who want to stab people will end up getting a job in the kitchen to get a knife.
And were they, proper chef knives?
Oh yeah. You'd have the proper stuff. They're all supposed to be accounted for before you leave, but they're always
so a lot of searching
missing.
when you.
Yeah. But one of the funniest things, not funny, but quite disgusting things I see, before the lunch hour meal, we'd have to wash the floors as the lunch hour meal was going out in the kitchen. And how this was done was by filling up metal buckets with soapy water and just throwing them over the floor and then getting the squeegee and going over the floor. So we were doing this one day, and they were loading up one of the trolleys, and savoury rice it was, and somebody dropped the savoury rice and the lid popped off and it all went into the water on the floor. And he went to the cook. He went, "Governor," he said, "I've dropped a thing of savoury rice. You'll have to cook another one." He went, "I'm not cooking another one. I've got to go." He went over there, got the lid, scooped it all back into the bowl from the soap, held it upside down like that so the water drained out of it, and it was going to A wing, which was a normal wing, and he went, "Put the nonsense wing on it." So he sent it over to where the sex offenders were, and people just went, "Whoa!" How many times they've done that to our food? But the food is, I found a toenail in my pie in Idown. Loads of people are forever finding hair in their food. There's just some prisons have got no hygiene when it comes to the kitchen. They're not that interested. It's the law that they have to do these things, but it's too much of a bother to do them. It's too much of a bother to wash your hands every time you come out of the toilet. This is the thinking in prison. So food in prison is very, very important because it's the one thing you look forward to. It's the one thing that you get that you can look forward to, apart from exercise or a letter or a visit. And in most prisons, they just ruin the experience.
And do you find yourself going hungry?
A lot of times, yeah. I mean, you'd eat things in prison that you would never in a million years eat outside. I mean, I've had 2 slices of bread in my cell for 3 days. They were hard as rock, and one night I was so hungry I had to eat them. You could actually bang them off the wall, but I had to eat them because I was that hungry.
So what's going through your mind? You got a bit of bread in front of you. Yeah.
Just you accept it. When you're doing that when you're in that kind of life and you spend a bit of time in it, it's normal to you. What is not normal is like seeing some great food on your plate and thinking, "Wow, I can't wait to eat this." And a lot of prisoners, because you don't eat in dining halls anymore. In 99% of prisons in this country, there is no dining hall. They don't use it because they're flashpoints. The food is so bad. They discovered years ago that if you let all people together in a dining hall and give them crap food, they're going to kick off. I mean, the last time I'd done it was 1977 in Dover Borstal, where we actually had a riot over the food, over the fish. The fish was rotten. And the governor come in and said, "Look, you're going to have to eat it. There's nothing else." And we all kicked off and the whole wing went up. So, you pay your money and you take your choice. But I'd say 80% of prison food is absolute rubbish. Badly cooked, bad ingredients, badly presented. They don't care what it looks like. It's not a top restaurant. They throw it on your tray with a ladle and that's it. And these things you see in porridge and things where they just slop. That's how it is.
And can you sweet talk the chef?
No.
Is there a bit of bribery going in at all?
No, I'll tell you what there is, though. You've got not only the kitchen workers, you've then got prisoners who are called hot plate boys. And what they will do is they will serve up the food from the hot plate. They haven't cooked it, but they'll serve it up. And if there's something good, the reason you want to be a hot plate boy or a kitchen worker is because you get the best of food, right? That's the perk. So if you're a hot plate boy and something comes over, say a leg of chicken, like very rarely you'll get a leg of chicken. You'll pick out the best ones for yourself, maybe a couple of extras. And the screws who work behind the hot plate, who are known as hot plate hamsters because they're forever eating the food. They're not supposed to. They can get sacked for eating prisoners' food. They don't care. It's stealing prisoners' rations is like kind of, it's de rigueur. It's one of the things they do. It's one of the perks of the job. So, the hot plates, boys, you could get into them if you know them, and you might go up and say, listen, what's for dinner today? And they might say, like, a rissole. You say, sort us out 2 good ones. Well, here's a couple of roll-ups, or here's a joint for yourself. So, you can get into them people.
What about, like, bullion, for example? So let's just say you've eaten your breakfast, you had the bag.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're hungry. Yeah. Very night before. And you might have someone who's like, a bit violent or whatever. And would he go up to someone and say, give me your breakfast?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that happens
so that,
a lot.
That happens a lot. And how's that handled? Do you know anyone who's had that or experienced it yourself?
Yeah, something similar. A mate of mine who's a lifer.
Sorry, what?
A friend of mine who was a lifer.
Okay.
It's kind of similar, but this kind of thing happens all the time. And what happened with him was he arrived in a prison. It was hide down. I knew him quite well from other prisons and knew he was a bit of a lunatic, but nobody else did. As far as they're concerned, he's just some geezer who's just come in. So he said hello to me, and he come in on canteen day. So you have to go queue at the wing, go round to a room, and they pay out your canteen. They give you your canteen. You bring it back in a bag to the spur you live on. And there was a guy in there at the time, huge fella. His nickname was the Devil. It wasn't the Devil from Liverpool. It was another guy. And he had a habit of picking on the new guys, and with his hulking look and his menacing looks, he would come over and stand by the gate during canteen, and anyone he thought might be a target, might be a bit weak, he'd demand a fee off them. I want something out of your canteen. So how he come unstuck was my mate Mick turned up, a lifer, and Mick was a very violent man, went out, got his canteen, come back in with his bag of canteen. I was up on the landing, and the geezer stopped them and went, listen, Paddy, because he was Irish, Mick, and he went, listen, Paddy, he said, you've got to pay a fee to live on this spur. So Mick went, is that right? He said, yeah. He said, what do you want? He went, some stuff out your canteen bag. So Mick went, do you like peaches? So he said, yeah. He said, I like peaches. He went, all right. Opened the bag, took out a tin of peaches and smashed it straight into his face, broke his nose, knocked him out. And from then on, that guy, wherever he went in the prison system, was known as Peaches.
Right, yeah.
But there's a lot of that, people bullying people for food or trading. There's a hell of a lot of trading. There's a big black market. So you might, if you're a tattooist, you might say, give me your pudding, give me your afters. For the next 6 weeks, I'll do your tattoo on your back. Or I'll make some hooch. You give me your main meal, like every second day, and I'll supply you with hooch or drugs or anything, really. I'll do a portrait of your daughter if you give me your breakfast in a bag for 6 weeks running.
Right.
So there's a lot of trading like that, a lot of black market.
Can I ask a really stupid question? And you know what? I don't mind if anyone thinks it's the stupid question. So do you find that with the meals being the way they are, let's just say you came in as a big guy, or a really skinny guy, do people kind of even out? I know, even out a bit. I mean, like, basically, would you lose weight? Would you have enough food? Because I mean, if you're going big, then you're not getting a good meal. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah,
I've known guys do it on purpose. I've seen, like, one fella, he was 27 stone when he come in. He was doing 6 years. And he... because what happens is, if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, you get a piece of fruit a day, which is always an orange or an apple. But what he was doing was, he was actually foregoing meals, but paying out tobacco for everybody else's fruit. And he'd done this for about 2 months and lost a hell of a lot of weight just eating fruit and a bit of bread occasionally. So, yeah, you can do that. And there are other people who go into jail. The trouble with it is, even though the food is absolutely crap, it's also, on the whole, very unhealthy. It's the stodge that if you eat it and you're sitting in a cell for months, you're going to put on weight. A lot of prisoners come out of prison fatter than when they went in because of the inactivity. You're sitting in a cell all day and you're being fed mainly on a diet of potatoes and bread. That's your main diet. So, yeah, I mean, there are people who go into jail and lose a lot of weight and do it on purpose and go to the gym and train. Not now, with the lockdown, there is no gym. But there's also guys who come in and are constantly hungry. Seriously. I mean, DC was the famous one, the juvenile offenders. You're all growing up, so you're all absolutely starving all the time. And the food in there was excellent, but tiny, tiny portions, and you could not get any more. So they gave you just enough for you to train every day and for you to do all the running about that they made you do and do the work, but not enough to keep you satisfied. So people were forever after more food and hungry.
So obviously different prisons you have different experiences, right? So are there some prisons out there which give a good meal and a good substantial meal? Let's just say it's a prison which isn't for, people with like sort of, might be getting out soon, or maybe the crime isn't as bad as some others, and it might be a prison like that. Are there any like that?
There are a couple, but I think the best food in prison is in the mainly top security prisons. And the reason for that being is prisoners are allowed to cook their own food. You have a kitchen on each wing. So if you're in that situation, if you've got money, you can buy a chicken or you can buy some potatoes and you can make them. You all took turns. What they have is, in the dispersal jails, you have what they call food boats. So you might have 4 or 5 prisoners all get together. They're all, say, getting a tenner a week. They all put in £2, buy them a couple of meals for the weekend, and you'll take turns to cook them because you've got a kitchen on the wing. So that's the best food you can get in prison, is the food you cook yourself and you know where it's come from rather than the stuff.
So is there we were talking about the shops before. Is there a shop in every prison, or just like the ones that you described where you can buy some food and cook it?
Well, this is a hard question, really, because it used to be, there was a shop in every prison, and all they were 2 cells knocked together, or a purpose-built little area where you could go and there's a hatch, you'd sign your thing and get your shopping. But those officers who sold the stuff to you in the old days, had to go out and buy it themselves. Not out of their own money, they had a credit card, but they would have to go out and stock the prison every week with the groceries. And in those days, it was a much better system because you would know the staff who were in the canteen because you'd go there every week and you'd build up a relationship with them. And sometimes, if you hadn't been paid on a Tuesday and you went and you run out of tobacco and you went down and went, Gov, give us ½ ounce until Thursday, and they go, let's have a look at how much you're getting paid. Yeah, you can cover it all right. Now you couldn't never do anything like that because what they'd done was they said the Sun newspaper and the News of the World kicked off over servile warders being sent out to the shops by prisoners to buy quince and caviar and all, which never happened. But servile warders working for prisoners, they're thumbing their noses at us, living in luxury, buying chickens and getting the screws to deliver them. So the government went, whoa, stop this system that works absolutely well and is amazingly good. And what we'll do is we'll privatise it all. So what we'll have is the likes of DHL Booker bringing in bags of stuff from a warehouse every week and just giving it to you in your hand. You can't order anything. You can order whatever's on their list, but you can't order anything off their list.
So it sounds to me like one of the biggest problems is people having an opinion and saying something which they have got absolute no clue about.
Yeah.
And they're just making stuff up. Yeah. And unfortunately, one thing that's wrong with the world is that, you see what you see on the press and they give you what they give you, and then we're pretty stupid enough to kind of believe it all.
I think basically politicians in this country are very cowardly. They're good at shouting the odds, but they're led by the nose by the tabloid press. They are terrified of their careers being ruined by a big expose in the Daily Mail or the Telegraph or, the Sun, because that's what they do, those kind of papers. They dig around, find something and blow it out of all proportion. A prime example being Holloway Prison about 20 years ago. They had a lot of long-term women prisoners in there, some of whom were very disturbed, and they decided that in order to give them a bit of a boost, they'd have a Halloween party. That doesn't mean drink. It means they were allowed to make their own Halloween costumes and they were allowed to have some lemonade and some cakes and have an hour out their cell celebrating Halloween. And the Sun got hold of a picture of them all in Halloween costumes, spread it across.
All right, so we just, like we had to do in a previous one, we just had to do a little bit of an edit there. But we're going to pick it up in the same kind of direction. So we're talking about the Halloween situation. So the press got hold of it.
Yeah, it was Holloway Prison, and the press managed to get a photograph that was taken by one of the officers of all these women in uniform with glasses of lemonade. And of course they blew it up, put it on their front page and said, look at these evil, creepy women who are supposed to be serving their time, all enjoying themselves while outside old age pensioners die for the lack of a bowl of porridge. The usual sort of heartstring tugging stuff. They pick on prisons and on the whole because they're easy targets. Everyone hates prisoners, let's face it. If you tell the average member of the public that prisoners are not getting enough to eat, they go, well, they shouldn't have went to prison then. So the press know they're on good ground with that. They can take the moral high ground because criminals basically and prisoners to them are just, scum who are thumbing their noses at society. That's how they look at them, because it's a great little trope for them to use to sell papers, But I mean, a prime example of that would be, and I guarantee it will happen this year, it happens every year at Christmas, is that some prison insider, normally a member of prison staff, will leak the Christmas menu of their prison to the local paper, who will then...
There's money in that?
Yeah, of course there is. They earn backhanders all the time talking to the press. Don't get me started on that.
Right, hang on, let me write that down. That's a future podcast.
Yeah, they've done it to me. The wretches sold me to the tabloids. But so what they'll do is they'll get this Christmas menu, which looks great on paper, and they'll leak it to the local press and say, look at what these scumbags are getting at Christmas while people are starving out here, kids are starving. But what they don't tell you is what's written down on that paper bears no resemblance to what is actually served up. In fact, you probably get more nutrition and enjoyment from eating the actual menu than you would from eating the food they serve up. And that's a fact, that really is. Christmas, what they do with Christmas is you get a Christmas dinner, you get a slice of tinned turkey, a couple of roast potatoes, the usual bit of veg, mainly undercooked. But then for the rest of Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and the rest of the holiday, you won't be given a meal. You'll be given bags of stuff that you survive on in your cell while the staff have gone home to have their Christmas. Basically, a sausage roll in the bag, an apple, a bag of generic crisps, there's a penguin biscuit, that kind of thing. There's your treat for Christmas. So that's what you've got to look forward to at Christmas in jail, as regards food.
So, wow, it's mad, isn't it? So, wrapping this one up, how do you think the prison system, when it comes to food, could be improved? I mean, you mentioned before about actually having some designated kind of sort of chefs in there, healthier food. I mean, if everything's been so privatised and the shops can be like DHL and that can be so expensive, and there is money that can go in there, surely. So if you could just summarise it quickly, what do you think they could do to improve the food, which I think will improve, I'm guessing, I always say, I don't know these things, I'm learning myself, that would improve the morale within the prison system?
That's quite easy. And it's another one of those cases where we should go back to a system that worked before they privatised it. And the system they had before, the reason food was fairly adequate and good in prison, say up to the 80s, was because every prison had a farm where the prisoners would look after the animals. You'd get fresh milk, fresh eggs for the kitchens. You'd get your meat from the farm. They also had vast vegetable gardens. So each prison was self-sustainable. Each prison baked their own bread and rolls. So they'd come in early in the morning, the cooks, and they'd put on the bread. And you got good, nutritious, cheap food that would fill you up and was also good for you, because the prisoners were actually building it and it made jobs for the prisoners. Now what they do is buy a load of old soot off some privatised company in a plastic bag and go, there you go. In the old days, prisoners were actually involved in the creation and the cooking of their food in a much better way, because what better than to spend a year growing your vegetables and then to eat them, around Christmas, the stuff that you've made yourself.
And of course, you have respect and you look after things that you look after, didn't you?
And cheaper. Much cheaper, it's unreal.
Yeah.
And it gets prisoners out of cells and it gives them a new string to their bow, because a lot of prisoners had never been on a farm. Suddenly you're working in a prison farm. When you get out, that's another string to your bow. Yeah, I've worked on a dairy farm, or I've worked on a chicken farm, or I've grown something.
That's a very interesting point. What do you guys think? Do you think that prisons should go back to that? Looking after their own meat, growing their own vegetables. What do you think? Let us know. You can contact us at intheslammer@monkeynutuk.com. If you're on YouTube watching this, then do leave a comment below. Let us know your thoughts. If you've got any questions, or you're going through a situation, you need a bit of advice, or you just want to voice your opinions, and contact Noel, then leave your comment below. We'll do our best to get back, but we can't promise every time, but we'll do our best. And remember to subscribe, give us a like and share it, tell your friends, and we'll see you at the next podcast of In the Slammer. Noel, thanks very much as always. Appreciate it. Cheers.
Thank you, Elliott.
You've been listening to In the Slammer with Noel Razor Smith, hosted by Elliott Frisby, music by Andrew Stamp, produced by Chris Byland. recorded at MonkeyNut Audiobooks. For more information, visit the In the Slammer Facebook page or visit monkeynut.uk.com. If you have a question or want to contact Noel Razor Smith, then please email intheslammer@monkeynut.uk.com.